Mao Zedong, a Chinese communist revolutionary who was the father of the People's Republic of China. He formed the CCP, and during his reign as chairman, Mao Zedong expanded his frontier of communism in Asia and led to migration and fleeing of people. The story of Chairman Mao is one of the most influential and significant of the 20th century. Mao Zedong was born on the 26th of December, 1893, in the small village of Shaoshan. He was the oldest of 5 children in a peasant family. Mao's father, Mao Yicheng, was a wealthy farmer. But he died when Mao was only 13. Leaving the family in debt, Mao was forced to drop out of school and work on the farm to support his family. Despite his humble beginnings, Mao was ambitious and had a strong desire for knowledge. He began reading and became interested in politics at a young age. In 1911, the Qing dynasty was overthrown and the Republic of China was established. Mao saw this as an opportunity to bring social change and political change in China. Mao Zedong would go to Beijing and learn about communism from the works of Karl Marx. He would be around other thinkers like him, so when the CCP was formed, he was one of the founding members. The CCP found itself allying with the Kuomintang, led by Chiang Kai-shek. They created the first united front to deal with the warlords that came from the chaos during the era of humiliation. The Kuomintang betrayed the CCP in order to gain more power during the Shanghai massacres of the communists and subsequent purging and executings. Most of the CCP was now destroyed, which led to the Kuomintang to take control of China. Mao Zedong was also involved in the purges. The remainder of his troops killed those suspected as traitors along with nationalists. Mao was initially a pacifist, but his policies and actions became more harsh in response of the actions of the National Party of China. This foreshadows many of Mao's future policies. The Kuomintang came to power in China, and they were soon encircling the CCP. Here in Jiangxi, their headquarters. So Mao Zedong had to go from Jiangxi and take his army 5,000 miles up to Shanxi. During this journey, Mao presented his skills and led the army, which solidified him as the leader of the CCP. While the Kuomintang was focused on wiping out the CCP, Japan invaded Manchuria, and the people were getting tired of the Kuomintang. The CCP got more and more support. But by this time, the Kuomintang and the CCP had teamed up once again to create the Second United Front to face Japan. After Japan's defeat in World War II, relations between the Kuomintang and the CCP inevitably fell apart and brought China into another civil war. But things were different now. Because of how unpopular the Kuomintang was getting, the CCP grew massively among the peasants and now were stronger than ever. But for nationalists, it told a whole different story. These soldiers were tired and demoralized after years of fighting. And the CCP won the Civil War. Now that Mao Zedong has created a Communist People's Republic of China, let's see how Mao Zedong spreads this ideology, assists other creations of communist parties or states, leads hundreds of thousands of people to flee, and ultimately expand its frontier of communism in Asia. The Second World War left behind a power vacuum in Korea. Korea was split into two, the North being communist, expanding the communist frontier. The North wanted to rule the entire Korean peninsula, so they invaded. North Korea started uprisings within the South, and started invading. Seoul fell, and so too was the entire of South Korea, until UN forces decided to join the war. The UN made landings at Pusan and then at the location of Incheon. The UN forces pushed more and more back, where the goal was the annihilation of the Communist North. China joined the war, fearing that the UN forces would continue north and invade them too. This was the turning point in the war. China sent troops. Around 300,000 of them joined the fight against the UN. They sent supplies and many units. The communist forces pushed the UN forces back with haste, as they overwhelmed them with their sheer numbers, employing a tactic called human wave attacks. Soon, the UN forces adapted, and both sides signed an armistice agreement. Even though they didn't take over the entire peninsula, Mao Zedong and the communist forces still established another communist country, and thus, spreading the communist frontier. Ho Chi Minh learned about the works of Karl Marx from CCP officials and had a good relationship with Zhou Enlai, the first premier of China. North Vietnam, like North Korea, wanted to rule the entirety of Vietnam. Vietnam's plan to succeed in their war against America was to make it drawn out and painful enough that the American public would turn and want the troops to be pulled out. And that's exactly what happened. But they couldn't accomplish this alone. Vietnam was a poor country with little land to supply resources for a massive war. This is where China would step in to aid Vietnam. Even before the Vietnam War with America, Mao Zedong would still aid North Vietnam immensely. Military aid totaled 320 million yuan, 10,000 pieces of artillery. The CCP also built the Red River Delta Defense and supplied Vietnam with war infrastructure. This sets the stage for the Vietnam War. The South Vietnam government was very unpopular, and they were suppressing their Buddhist majority, which leads to this monk protesting like this. North Vietnam took full advantage of this and launched uprisings through the Ho Chi Minh Trail. As fighting between North Vietnam and South Vietnam continued, a certain Gulf of Tonkin incident happened, where supposedly Vietnamese torpedo ships attacked the USS Maddox. Sources now state that this supposed attack didn't happen. But regardless, the Gulf of Tonkin incident led Americans engaging in the war directly.
A battalion of U.S. 1st Air Cavalry clashes with North Vietnamese.
The United States did not invade North Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and therefore couldn't take out Hanoi. China threatened that an invasion into North Vietnam would result in direct military conflict with China, a repeat of the Korean War. Americans started bombing Vietnamese infrastructure, of which Chinese engineers quickly repaired. The Chinese sent many anti-aircraft units and shot down many US aircraft. Eventually, the public now opposed the war, and soon, President Nixon announced
all American forces will be withdrawn from South Vietnam.
Without the aid of American forces, Saigon fell to the north. So essentially, the Americans were limited from the beginning due to China. North Vietnam was able to fight and maintain the country because of China. This was how Mao Zedong spread communism. The end of the Vietnam War led to a big change. The political attitude towards interventions had shifted. Americans never directly invaded again. Mao Zedong took full advantage of this to establish and aid other communist parties throughout Asia. Communist revolutions swept through countries like Korea, Vietnam, and Laos, as Mao's ideas inspired revolutionaries around the world. The spread of communism led to a stark division between communist and capitalist countries, and this division created a frontier between two very different ways of life. But let's talk about the aftermath, particularly the Vietnamese boat people who fled Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia after the war ended. They risked their lives to escape persecution and seek a better life elsewhere. Here's one of the refugees, Dr. Dat Lu, explaining his experience.
Dr. Dat Lu, I am a refugee from Vietnam. I am a lawyer, a special advisor to the head of the government in the chief province of Quang Nam. I am a dissident intellectual and know a lot about communism.
What motivated immigrants to leave?
They consider us an enemy, especially the defeated military population and anything who owns something. So manager or owner, they are considered enemy of the communists.
So even just like regular people that run stores were
enemies? Yes, almost any people are considered enemy to North Vietnam.
Millions of people started to flee, but the journey across the South China Sea was dangerous.
Almost 1/3 or even 1/2 of people perished in the ocean, including my brother. My brother perished in the ocean with his wife. They have some kind of like a pirate, you know that? The Thai pirate. They come and take over their belongings, killing them, rape them.
Mao Zedong's legacy is his frontier. How Mao Zedong's past affected his actions during the Cold War, how Mao Zedong aided communist parties in order to expand his frontier, but also the consequences, of which many tried to flee and died trying.